person that invented the AA should get like I don't know, how do you say tamlugim in English? Royalties. They should get royalties for the AA 1212. Everyone using it in the entire world. Okay. Hi everyone, thank you for joining my talk about open source, and open source is open choice, right? So I will show you a set of tools to help ease your decision about open source adoption, when you should do it, and give you practical tips about adopting open source libraries and projects in your environments, both dev and production. First of all, a little bit about myself. I'm Hila Fish, as greatly introduced. I'm not gonna repeat everything that you just said. Just say that I'm co-organizer of DevOps Days at Tel Aviv. Conferences are a great way to deliver knowledge, and I really like to give back to the community, and that's why I'm helping organizing the conference as well. This is my second time in a Netways conference, and I really love this, so this is why I'm here, and I really hope that you'll enjoy. Okay, so open source, just to have this baseline. As we know, it is publicly available and can be modified at will, but of course, don't push to master. We don't want to have these issues. And the thing is that a lot of tools that we use in our day-to-day is open source. So GitHub and Firefox and React, Java, and even Linux, right? A lot of the tools that we use in our day-to-day is open source, which is awesome. In the late 90s, the proprietary software was considered to be the standard, and it was considered to be bad strategy for companies to go towards and shift to open source. And coming forward from 2020 up until now, it became more mainstream. Companies both contribute to open source, they outsource their own main products and stuff like that, and they see that it really helps them achieve a greater impact on the tech landscape. So let's first of all understand what's so good about open source. So it helps you create a rich developer community, which is based on knowledge, but it really heavily relies on communication and collaboration in order to succeed. Manish Sharma, who's the general manager of GitHub India, said that open source is an enabler of innovation, and that businesses that turns to open source, it helps them speed up business transformation and really impact the tech landscape because of that. Open source also boosts code quality and security, because someone told me that Linus Torvald wasn't the first one to set the sentence. I have no idea, but it's great to show him, because he's like the father of open source, right? He invented both Linux and Git. So he also, or the first one, I don't know, that said, given enough eyeballs, all bugs are shallow, meaning that since the code base is publicly available, anyone can spot errors, omissions, and stuff like that. And if you don't only spot them and you really fix the code, then the code will be in a much higher quality state and will be much more secured. Adaptivity. So as long as the projects have more users, then there are more use cases, and the code will be much more robust. It also allows you to adapt to various use cases, because it allows surfacing bugs and edge cases much more rapidly than traditional QA processes. You just release the code and that's it. It also encourages more modularity, avoiding the one-size-fits-all kind of assumption, and resulting in a great flexibility and lower customization costs in the long run. Agility. So a lot of projects of open source follow modern software development processes, which leads to more frequent releases without sacrificing quality. And of course, we have less bureaucracy, right? Because opening PRs or opening issues, as opposed to opening tickets in support, ticketing system for proprietary softwares, we know the drill there. And there are no regularly scheduled release processes. You just release the version, everyone picks it up and use it whenever they want to, as opposed to a proprietary software where they release once a week or something like that, because they have these constraints for their customers. Okay, now I want to talk to you about the DevOps perspective towards open source, because usually the open source realm is more considered to be some of like the developers, right? Because they use libraries and stuff like that. But us developers, DevOps also use open source quite heavily. And we have a bit different perspective towards open source. And I know that a lot of developers sometimes ask, what do DevOps do? And what are you, what? So I want to show you specifically the DevOps perspective toward open source, because I think it could help you understand why are we doing things in a certain way and where are we coming from. So in order to understand the DevOps perspective, we first need to understand the developer's perspective. So developers think about functionality, meaning that whenever they find an open source library, they check and they think about, will the library get integrated in my code properly, and what efforts are needed to do so? Maybe I need to do refactoring and stuff like that. As opposed to that, us DevOps care about the environment. So we look at the project that we found, and we look at it as a whole. And we think about how it will get integrated in the entire environment. And we have peripheral things to think about, like security and maintenance and stuff like that. Also, when it comes to challenges, collaboration leads to better conclusions and solutions. So the common ground between open source and DevOps is definitely collaboration. We need to think about collaborating both when writing the open source code and also for DevOps, because the entire idea, the entire culture behind DevOps is collaboration. So since the common ground is collaboration, we are more inclined to go to open source because we know that it will serve our purposes and our needs. And why better solutions? Usually DevOps engineers are like the production gatekeepers, and we want to strive to have the best solution possible. So whenever we bring a lot of minds to the table or think together on solutions, it allows surfacing the best solutions possible, because more minds that thinking about a certain problem bound to make better solutions surface. And then we all want to strive to the best solution because we want to care about the environment. We want to make sure we do the best and the most suitable thing for our environment. Another thing, we treat open source as tools. A lot of DevOps engineers came from the background of system engineers, integrators. So since we have this background, we just say, hey, I see a tool. This tool helped me to deliver code, to automate this, to introduce this capability. And since integration is no strange concept to us, we just say, yeah, let's take this project, integrate it to our toolchain, and basically, that's it. So we're not afraid of introducing another tool to the toolchain because we are used to the idea and the concept of integration. Of course, not everything is good and only bright. There are things to consider and things that are less or more tricky. So upgrades. We have the environment stability to think about, and we want to introduce new capabilities, but we don't want to rock the boat too much. Thinking about Jenkins, okay? Show me one person that is able to upgrade Jenkins without having any fear of the plugins getting break. You know what I'm talking about. I suggested it like a while back, and then I got really great resistance of, no, let's, it will break. So there are a lot of complexities on that, but of course, for other open source tools, if you use Kubernetes, not the managed way, but open source way, they also introduce a lot of complexities and stuff like that. So upgrades and any complexities because of that could potentially rock the boat and have issues. And we need to think if it is worthwhile. Maybe we need to wait for a better version that produces more capabilities that will worthwhile the fact that we are rocking the boat. We have trade-offs, not only complexities, but other trade-offs, like if this is the tool that we need, because it only serves like half of the use case and not fully, so we need to think about that as well. The variety of projects is enormous. Maybe we found 3 or 4 projects out there that could fit my use case, but how do I choose the right one? Spoiler, I have a section for that in the presentation, so stay tuned. And in the middle of everything, we have the research, because we found various solutions. We need to check the solutions that we found to make sure that we know exactly what we are introducing to the environment, because we don't want to have mistakes because we didn't prepare ourselves enough. This is something that I really like, because this is true not only for open source, but being an engineer in general. We need to keep tabs and be informed of what's going on. And I'll give you an example for open source. So let's say I found a tool that could be at use to me, but version 1.0 is not great for my use case because the features are not quite there, or there's a very big bug that I can't really afford introducing to the environment. So if I keep tabs on that project, maybe version 2.0 will be great. It will serve the features that I need, the bug will get fixed by then, and stuff like that. So this is one example. Another example is CentOS, the operating system and CentOS, and reached end of life at the end of 2021. If you don't know, end of life means no more security patches are being introduced to the operating system. And if I didn't know about it and I still have servers running CentOS, I'm putting my servers at risk because no patches means the servers can be exploited by hackers and stuff like that. So we always have to keep tabs and be informed of what's going on, not only for open source stuff, but also for being a better engineer. This is something that if you have this notion in mind, I believe it will help you be a better engineer as well. And I really love this picture because if you'll see, it says keep moving people even though no one is there. Okay, so that's exactly the thing. You need to keep tabs and be up to date and be proactive about it, and not have your not just because your team leader is breathing down your necks and say, hey, what's going on with that? Check this, check this. You need to do it on your own. It will make you a better engineer. It will help you do your job much more properly, basically. Okay, let's understand when should we consider adopting open source. There are various use cases, some more fitted to us, some less. So let's see when are the scenarios that you should consider adopting open source. When you have an uncommon use case, and I will tell you a story. So in one of my previous companies, we had this application that didn't run 24/7, just in certain cases, based on MSMQ messages. And then this application ran on Kubernetes, and back at the time, we ran on GKE, the Google Kubernetes engine. And Google Kubernetes engine only allowed you to downscale pods to 1 and not to 0, which didn't fit our use case. The application didn't need to run all the time. And we wanted to save money, of course. So then I Googled for this use case, and I found KEDA. KEDA is a great tool, production ready, that allows you to downscale pods to 0 based on several conditions and scenarios that you define. We used it, and it was great, suited for our use case perfectly, and that was great. So this is one example. If you have uncommon use case, and maybe there is a proprietary software that serves this, but if there is an open source one that is production ready, and I will show you ways to check if it's production ready or not, then why not use this open source tool? Solve your developer needs. So another story. In another company that I worked for, we had this flow where there was non-techie people that needed to run stuff on production because there was this flow that they need to run in order to produce some reports and also to initiate some digest data stuff that I don't remember. It was a very long time ago. But they needed to run stuff on production. And I didn't want them to go to my servers and run stuff because I was afraid they will do stuff that they shouldn't do. And once they're in, they're in. So I checked online for a solution for that, and I found a great tool called a script server, which basically allows someone to, it's like a UI, and you are allowed to run Ansible playbooks, Terraform code, any scripts, all of these sorts, including permissions mechanism. And then everything is in a UI. There are guardrails because whenever you choose a certain flag, you can do like other flags are being grayed out and stuff like that. So it was great, perfectly suited for my use case. I integrated this tool, introduced the flows into this tool, gave the non-techie people to run it, and then instead of running it for them like every month or in the non-scheduled times that they needed to run, they did it themselves. Then it was able to basically attend to their needs and also remove the bottleneck for my team, because if I'm not available to do that, they don't need to wait for us. They can do it by themselves. So this is one example, but if you have other examples for attending your developer needs and you can answer these needs by utilizing open source tools, why not? Limited budget. So when your budget is limited, you can use a free version of a proprietary software, or you can use an open source alternative. But the thing is that you need to think about the lower total cost of ownership. So whenever you introduce some tool, it's not only the cost of the tool itself, but you have another cost that you need to accumulate inside, like the cost of training, the cost of overall maintenance in the day-to-day. So when you use open source, of course, the cost itself will be low if the license of the open source is free. But if there's no really something that bound you to use a proprietary software, why not use an open source, right? Because the lower total cost of ownership will be always smaller because it's usually free. And then probably the training and the training, maintenance, and stuff like that is something that you will invest both in proprietary and open source. So might as well go to open source if there's no something that really bound you to use this proprietary software. Insufficient in-house resources, ability-wise, like this family guy right here, or capacity-wise to incorporate or to introduce a solution. So there's, usually people laugh at this GIF, but oh well, maybe you didn't look. I looked at it looped, and I always laugh at it. Never mind. So there's a sentence, right? Why reinvent the wheel? So if there's already an open source tool that allows you to do some sort of capabilities, do it instead of investing time in creating the tool yourself. Especially if you have insufficient in-house resources to do it yourself, then choose an open source tool that is in a ready enough state to accommodate your use cases. We can't talk about the good without talking about the bad, because there is no such thing in life. We always have good and bad combined. So let's discuss disadvantages of using open source. So first of all, security by obscurity. This notion doesn't apply on open source because proprietary software can say, hey, our source code is closed. Hackers can't look up the code and detect any ways to exploit it. So it is something to consider. You know, it's, you can say less, more about it, but it is something to consider. It is prone to abuse. I don't think it's happened a lot, but I have two cases that happened on the last year that I can share with you. First of all, the NPM package colors, the maintainer added a loop in one of the versions, and then created a lot of issues for the company that companies that used latest on pulling the version. And another example is Faker.js, where the maintainer had a bankruptcy, and then the version that he released was basically no version. He deleted the project. So you can say things happen, and you can say, hey, especially if open source tools are not backed up by companies, this stuff could happen. But usually it's not the case. You see that they have like something happened, and they took it out on open source. But usually it doesn't happen, and still, it could happen. And that's why you need to take this into consideration, especially if you introduce it in production. And if you want to avoid stuff like that happened in the colors NPM package, put version, like a hard-coded version, not latest, because you never know. Compliance. So in its raw form, open source usually gives no warranty or official guarantee, making it difficult to use in a business environment where compliance is a must. So this is also something to consider whenever you're introducing open source. Open source is not always free, okay? Just look at the recent license change happened to Terraform. It's still free if you want to use it as a regular client. But if you are a company that base your entire product on that open source, probably you'll have some issues when the license got changed. So the thing here is that you need to always check the licenses closely whenever you're looking to use a certain open source tool, because you never know, maybe it's not really something that you can use, and you don't want to go to this path if something comes up and you will be in a violation of this license. So especially if you have a limited budget, make sure you check the license carefully before you're trying to actually use the tool. Discontinued projects. So a lot of open source tools are backed up by companies, but some are not, and they are maintained by people like you and me. And they are allowed to discontinue the projects however they feel like it, because it's their project. So if it happens, it means two things for you if you adopted this tool. Either you need to maintain it yourself and be the sole maintainer or the main maintainer, or you can drop it and go and migrate to a different tool. So this is also something to consider. It could happen. Support is not guaranteed. You should assume good faith when working with open source. But I can give you an example for KEDA. When I introduced KEDA in dev, everything worked perfectly. And then just before it became production, I was able to shift some traffic to it. And then issues arise with traffic that came. I opened the ticket, an issue, and then even though I opened it like Friday night or something that didn't fit the time zones, not for me, not for them, still they were very nice. I explained the issue. They were sympathetic. They released a new version really off their work times, and they really helped me, and they allowed me to introduce it to production on time. So support is not guaranteed, but at least when I work in with open source, I assume good faith, and I really hope that you do as well. And one thing about proprietary software, in proprietary software, support is guaranteed, but it's not guaranteed to be good. Thank you. I felt it a lot. And last but not least, SaaS alternatives. So it's not really the opposite of an open source, but you will see that as long as companies will shift more and more workloads to the cloud, they might select to choose managed services and not open source, because the dev enablement shifts from DevOps dependency to a cloud lock scenario that in the long run, it is worthwhile for them. So we might see it increasing, like the cloud providers' adoption will likely increase, but we never know, because we still have a lot of use cases that support usages of open source, but it could happen. So to sum things up in regards to adopting open source software, there is no right or wrong. It's a matter of perspective, and there are multiple factors to consider, and you should choose really what's best for your use case. And how do you choose what's best for your use case? So that's the thing. You can Google your use case and find 3 or 4 solutions online, open source, that could fit your use case. And now you need to choose which one to go with. So how do you do that? So I'm going to show you here 8 metrics that I personally use when I utilize this decision and choose which one to go with, because we want to make sure that the solution that you go with is the right one for you. So I'm going to cover everyone like one by one and see how we can utilize those metrics in order to do this decision. First of all, popularity. Check GitHub sales, okay? Don't check it only, and don't make your entire decision based on that, because especially for companies that are backing up the open source, maybe they have marketing engines that helps boosting the product, even though the product is not that good. So GitHub sales is good, but don't always choose only based on that. Accumulate it with other metrics as well. Check if the project is part of CNCF or incubator, because if so, it means it follows high standards of delivering the project is based on these foundations. And Google the project alone to check for online presence, and also Google it versus similar products to check for reviews. A lot of the times, only upon these reviews and comparisons, you will find out like these little pieces of information that would be the critical things for your use case. So it really is encouraged to Google it versus other products to check for reviews and see if it really fits your use case or not. Activity. Check the commits rate. Are they daily, weekly, monthly? How many issues are there? How many releases are there? Is the project maintained by one developer or more? Does the project have sponsors that believes in the future of that future or roadmap of the project and wants to see it going forward? So all of these metrics are there to help you understand that if you have, for example, a heavy use case of of a tool that you just adopted, how long would you need to wait for a bug fix or a feature or something like that? So if you have a heavy use case, activity is a very good metric to be based on in order to see if it's something that you can really tolerate in your day-to-day or not. Security. So security, it's something that I find mostly relevant to developers and less to DevOps, because we usually use projects and not libraries. So we don't have really a supply chain because it's not integrated in the code, it's integrated in the entire environment. So we don't have supply chain considerations much, but security should always be on your minds. So everything, anytime you check any open source tool, whether it is a library or a project, check for any known vulnerabilities or any supply chain or any security considerations that could be of issue, because it's better to be safe than sorry. So security is also and always something to be considered whenever you're dealing with open source. A level of readiness. So check if the project is declared as production ready. KEDA, that I mentioned before, is declared as production ready. They showcased users that are already using it in production, which is great for me. As production gatekeeper, I want to make sure it is something that really fitted and mature enough for production. So this is one thing to check. And check the current features. Are they enough for you to sustain usage? And is my use case covered fully in the current state? And if not, am I okay with it? If I'm not okay with it, maybe I need to wait it out for the next version. Then maybe next version will be much more suited to my use case, and then I should use it. So this is for level of readiness. Documentation. So think about it this way. I really like to say that documentation is like the gateway to the project. I don't know anything about this project, and I want to make sure that I know exactly things like how to integrate and known issues and explanations about the features and stuff like that. Anything that will help me reach the decision of adopting this tool or not. So if the documentation is clear and cover most aspects, it will help me understand if it's something that I should adopt or not. And if not, probably I should steer away, because it will take me not only a lot of time to integrate, but also if I have issues during the implementation or during the day-to-day usage, maybe there wouldn't be any support like ways to go. Maybe the frequently asked questions or something like that couldn't be used in the day-to-day, and then I'll find myself using a great tool that fits my use case, but not something that I can maintain in the day-to-day whenever issues arise. So documentation is very important when you deal with open source, and it should always be clear and cover most aspects that will help you understand if it's the right choice for you or not. Does the project have an ecosystem? So this is really, I think it's one of the, for me, it's the most important metric out there, because this is the metric that you will feel in your day-to-day, and I'll explain. So in my previous company, I used, for CI/CD, I used Rundeck and not Jenkins, like a lot of people in the world. We used Rundeck, which is an open source tool. And whenever I had to introduce new capabilities and enrich certain flows and stuff like that, it was very hard for me to do it. Why? Because back then, documentation was very thin and wasn't very clear, whatever that was there. And also the ecosystem was very small. So there wasn't much, there was like a Slack channel that I could ask people, but they didn't use Rundeck much, and there wasn't enough online presence to find answers in Stack Overflow or any other places. So it was very hard for me to maintain it on a day-to-day basis and introduce new capabilities and new flows. And my day-to-day was very overburdened because of that, because I wanted to do things, and I found it very hard and very challenging every time I needed to use this tool. As opposed to that, Jenkins, which I used in the other company, you can say a lot of things about Jenkins. We just talked about the plugins, but it has a massive ecosystem. It has like a workspace of its own in Slack. A lot of people are using it. A lot of people are inclined and really like to help each other. You have a lot of online material about how to incorporate and how to do this and that in Jenkins. So it's very easy to do things and maintain it in the day-to-day because of that. So that's why ecosystem is a very crucial metric whenever you are choosing an open source tool. Always strive to check and to use the a tool that has a very large ecosystem because it will help you in the day-to-day, and you don't want to feel burnout just because you have a hard time managing a tool in the day-to-day because of that. So yeah, so check for any community channels, Slack, Telegram, Discord, because there the users will be there and engage and will try to help each other. Ease of use. Do a POC, see how well it gets integrated in your environment and the ratio between the amount of time to implement until the integration is done. But also check the issues on GitHub. Are the issues about features or about how do I do X? Because if they ask about how do I do X, probably it's not that easy to use and you need to think about it. And last but not least, roadmap. Is the project defined as an open source or is planned to go towards monetization? Some companies or companies that back up some certain tools or even the tools themselves, they know that they are going to just create it and enhance it until a certain point and then sell it to a company, for example. So some projects are planning to go towards monetization, and if you care about it and you care about all the reasons why choosing open source as opposed to closed source is something that is close to heart, if they plan to go towards monetization, probably it's not the best choice for you. And check the roadmap. Some companies, some tools have features planning, a roadmap for the project, which is good because then you can see, you can do the keep tabs that I mentioned before. You can say, currently it doesn't support this feature, but they are planning to release in 6 months this feature. This feature is exactly what I need. Okay, I will wait it out and hold with the integration until this will get released. So if they have feature planning, it means that this project is very well thought of. They want to invest in it. They think about the future and how to make it more suitable for more and more use cases. So this is also something good to rely on. So, to sum things up in regards to how to choose an open source project, you should ask the general questions to cover the basics and really understand if the project is in a ready enough state, as I showed you before, but also ask the tailored specific questions to cover your use case and your pain points, meaning that if you have heavy use case, you should put the emphasis on documentation and ecosystem metrics, as I explained before. But if, for example, you don't have any capacity for maintenance, then you should put the emphasis on readiness and ease of use, because then it just integration and that's done. You don't need to maintain it in the day-to-day, and then it really fits the no capacity scenario that you might have. Do a POC, see how it gets integrated in your environment, and really rely on your research. Ecosystem to the rescue, they really love to help, and engage in GitHub, raise issues, and contribute to the project success and eventually your success. And just a small token for me, because I really like open source and I really want to help boosting it as much as I can. If you want to contribute to open source without writing a single line of code because you don't know how to write code or because you don't have the time to do it, here's how to do it. Opening issues. If you open issues for bug fixes or feature requests, then you make the projects that you are talking about much more robust, more fitted for more use cases, and then it will help enhancing this project. Modify documentation. As I showed you, it is one of the metrics, and I personally didn't choose a lot of projects because the documentation was very weak and I didn't even know how to integrate. So if you have the skill, and it is definitely a skill, to write documentation, please modify documentation of any project that you had basically used or previously used or something like that, because it really will help me and others that want to adopt this tool. Share your use case. The tool that I mentioned before, the script server, I've written a blog post about it to help other people maybe see this use case and say, hey, this is exactly what I need, and adopt it as well. So I shared a blog post about it, and I really encourage you to do it for any open source tools that you might have used. Share any tools. Maybe you found just tools that you read about it and it sounds cool, or it sounds like something that your colleague would, might consider using. So share the tools that you found with colleagues and techie friends. Sponsorship. Money makes the world go around, as they say. A lot of companies already found the incentive to supporting open source tools that they currently use. My company, for example, Wix, sponsored, like in the last year, 8 libraries that they use in the day-to-day. So any sponsorship that you can convince either your company or even do pitching for tools that you use and they are backed up only by individuals, that could really help making the projects still sustainable and make them still maintained, yeah? Hold an open source mindset. So I can go and whatever use case I have, go immediately to do some stuff and go to proprietary software, or I can say, hey, no, I want to adopt open source, why not? And then check the metrics, and then you will see which tool that you will find will be mature enough to use, and then there wouldn't be any drawbacks to that. So if you have an open source mindset, then other people will be able to open their minds as well and say, hey, you adopted this tool, it turned out great, maybe I should do it too. And then you will keep the ball rolling, as they say. And last but not least, spread the word on open source at conferences, either on stage or outside and mingling. People can learn from it, people can hear about tools, use it, and then why not? That's it. Thank you so much.
So, thank you very much, Hila. We're running a little bit over time, but are there any questions at all or anything else that someone else would like to contribute?
I think I saw a raised hand, yes.
This might hit someone in the head.
Nice, I love this. I love it.
Good throw.
Hello,
Hi.
Thanks for the talk. I have 2 questions actually. So many eyeballs on the open source project means that they fix bugs faster, but many eyeballs also means that there are many parties interested in this project. Many parties means that they have business interest and that they want to bring some feature requests that will satisfy these interests. So I witnessed a situation when big company using open source product internally for critical path. They had to make a fork of this project because upstream was changing so fast that it breaks reliability of the product. Mm-hmm. What is your opinion on this?
So forking is problematic because then you don't really utilize the full power and harness the full power of open source. I don't like the idea of fork, and actually they did it now with Terraform. They created the fork called OpenTF to allow them to do whatever they want with Terraform and keep it as a free license. It's problematic because then it means that you need to keep maintaining it forever, and you can't really rely on the community to both contribute to it, maintain it, and to make sure it fitted the most use cases, and you only make it available and suitable for your use case. So I personally don't like this. If they found it like there's no other way, they have to do it, okay. But for me, if it was me, I would just use the latest version that's still up to date to what I need. And be in touch with the open source, like create in the GitHub issues, open issues for the changes that they did. If they are too fast, I would say, okay, this is great, but we have this use case which is massive. Maybe you thought this feature is good for small enterprises, but we are a big enterprise. This feature contradicts with da-da-da-da. Maybe you can like create an enhancement in the code that fit our use case as well. I wouldn't think that they will say no, because that's the idea of open source. They want to be as robust as possible and fit many use cases. So I would say that keep the version that you still use, and then open issues to make them know that you need to, you want the code to be enhanced to support the use case as well.
Okay, thank you. And another question, what is your opinion on businesses hiring maintainers of open source projects?
I don't see any problem with that. It's a win-win for everyone. The company enjoys the project being extended. So it is, listen, open source is used by individuals, but it's used by companies. There's no wrong in that, unless you're a company that is you're basing your entire product on the open source, like other companies that created the OpenTF. There's opinions to go around, but if you are able to contribute back through manpower or womanpower and contribute to the project back and make it more robust, it helps both ways and both sides. So why not?
Yeah, my point was that those businesses may have an influence on the direction of this open source project, which maybe not fit the needs of community.
The fact that they contribute doesn't mean that they always have influence on the roadmap, because they have the manpower, but not the same. Sometimes the maintainers are the one to decide on the roadmap. So they can say, I appreciate the manpower, but I want you to invest your time on X. If you're okay to do that, great, we will appreciate it. If not, it's not the direction we want the project to go. So usually the maintainer know the roadmap and they stick to it because they really want the project to be as wide as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Quick, very quick.
Just a very tiny addendum to your question. I think you have to keep in mind open source is not democratic, it's dictatorship. It's my project, I can do whatever I want with that. That's kind of what you have to keep in mind if you do, or if you use someone else's project, I think.
Could be.
Okay, thanks very much. And once again, thanks again, Hila, for your talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.